Introduced at CES 2021, the Samsung Galaxy Chromebook 2 is an anomaly in a bunch of ways. It has a 2 in the name, but doesn't exactly improve on its predecessor. It has a processor that in just a few months will feel a tad bit dated, and it lacks features that its contemporaries possess, and yet it still costs more than those other Chromebooks. In fact, there are very few ways in which this Chromebook is superlative at all, and yet there's still some charm to it. With perhaps a different name and a slightly lower price, I'd be inclined to call it a good purchase, but as it stands, I'm a bit back and forth on how I feel about this particular Chromebook, so let's talk about it. Today's video is brought to you by our thriving, awesome Patreon community where we offer things like behind the scenes footage, early access content, access to our private Discord channel, and an ad-free experience over at chromeunboxed.com, both on the desktop and mobile versions of our website. If you'd like to learn more, just head over to patreon.com/chromeunboxed. Okay, so on one hand, I love the way this device looks, but on the other, I don't love the way it feels. I love the vibrancy of the screen, but I miss the signature Samsung pen right in the chassis. I like the simplistic approach to ports, but I really do miss the ever-widening array of I/O found on competing devices. Again, for $699, Samsung is asking for this Chromebook I expect quite a bit. With devices out there like the Acer Spin 713, HP Chromebook X360 14C, and Lenovo ThinkPad C13 Yoga, the amount of Chromebook you can get for less than $699 is pretty staggering, and there are only more of these on the way at this point. At this sort of price point, a Chromebook really needs to deliver in all the ways that matter. It doesn't have to be the best at everything, it just needs to put the right pieces together to make a great overall impression. Okay, so let's get through the hardware stuff first. The chassis is red. Really, really red. So red, in fact, it nearly looks a tad orange in certain settings. It'll turn heads for sure, and I honestly really like the look. It sets the Galaxy Chromebook 2 apart from others, and if you're looking for a statement, this Chromebook makes it. The device feels good in the hand too, coming across as slim and rigid when closed up, thanks to the aluminum lid and the aluminum base. The hinges are good too, and combined with the boxy shape of this Chromebook, it honestly makes for a pretty decent convertible experience. I would love for a little bit of magnetic action on the top part of the lid when we flip it into tablet mode and keep things closed up tight. And all the tint and display modes work well, and the screen doesn't flop or wobble when I'm typing on a desk. The ports stay minimal as well, keeping just a USB Type-C on both sides and a micro SD card slot. On the bottom, you see some ports for fans in addition to the tasteful ports for those same fans around back, and those are important. With the Galaxy Chromebook 2, Samsung chose to put fans in here to keep the thermals under control. And that's one of the plaguing issues from the original Galaxy Chromebook. I rarely, if ever, heard them even kick on, and when I did, they were quiet enough not to really be a bother. I'd love for this to be a fanless Chromebook, sure, but I'd rather have fans and never have to worry about thermals if I have to choose between the two. Though not as thin and light as the original Galaxy Chromebook, this device is comfortable and will easily slide into a backpack with ease. At 15 millimeters thick and 2.7 pounds, it is not the thinnest nor the lightest Chromebook ever, but that extra space inside is necessary for the fans and the larger battery that largely remove the original Galaxy Chromebook's biggest flaws: overheating and poor battery life. The other openings in the chassis are for the highly touted speakers, and I'd give them a solid B+. They're loud and more full than most Chromebook speakers, but that's honestly a pretty low bar to pass here, and with all the hype Samsung threw at them, I was expecting a little more. Put next to the Pixelbook Go's non-branded, excellent speakers, it wasn't even a fair fight. Sure, these are better than most, but there is much more Samsung could have done at this price point, and the $649 Pixelbook Go is absolute proof of that. Cracking open the lid, we get a more modest 1080p QLED screen versus the somewhat overkill 4K AMOLED from the original, and I think this was a proper trade-off by Samsung. The pixels are still plenty dense, the screen is super bright at 400 nits, and the colors are deep and contrasty. Simply put, I love looking at this display. I still prefer a 3:2 aspect ratio, and I'm blown away by how spacious my Spin 713 feels with its 3:2 13.5-inch diagonal measure versus this 16:9 13.3-inch one. 3:2 is just that much better for so many things that I just wish other manufacturers would get on board and move in this direction. While the screen is pretty to look at, I just find more functionality in 3:2 screens, and I just really would love to see this Samsung QLED 13-inch screen in a 3:2 ratio at some point down the road. That would be special. The keyboard and trackpad are less stellar than the original also, but they're fine. The keys are really short throw, but pretty clicky, and I was just flat out inaccurate, honestly, on this keyboard. I don't think the keys were that much more shallow than, say, a Pixelbook or a Pixelbook Go. I was just really less accurate on these for some reason. The backlight is subtle, and there's very little light bleed underneath the keys. And add that to the black keycaps, and I really love the look of this keyboard, even if I'm not in love with the typing experience. The trackpad was great. Small, but great. It stayed smooth, it registered a satisfying click, and performed all my gestures with ease. My biggest gripe was probably the plastic surrounding the keyboard and trackpad though. There's just something a little off-putting about plastic under your palms as you're typing. Additionally, when opened up, the Galaxy Chromebook 2 exhibits far more flex than I'd like to see at this kind of price point. And again, comparing it to the Pixelbook Go in this price range, it just doesn't feel premium. When it's closed up and I'm wrenching on the aluminum sandwich created by the lid and the base, things feel nice and sturdy. Only when you open it up do you notice a good bit of flex, and honestly, I just hate the way it feels. And this leads into the biggest pet peeve I have with the plastic area on the Galaxy Chromebook 2. Stickers. First up, can we just stop with stickers on consumer Chromebooks? Put them on there for the floor models, but please just save us all the hassle of removing them. We ended up with 2 review units, and both took the same 30 minutes to get the stickers off with the residue and all the glue that came with it. Yes, Intel stickers have always been bad about this, but honestly the Intel sticker was the least offensive. The big black sticker that Samsung slapped on the left side of the trackpad peels off in layers, and it took me an eternity to get that thing off of there. Even after fully removing it and its glue, I was left with a residual marking on the plastic that I could not get off of the device. This wasn't a one-off issue, and I've noticed other reviewers didn't even bother trying to remove their stickers. It's kind of shameful, and I wish I had a better way to tell you to get the thing off of there if you do choose to buy this Chromebook, but I don't. It's borderline ridiculous. Under that plastic chassis lies some other odd choices by Samsung. A 10th gen Core i3 paired up with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of eMMC storage. While those specs are just fine for performance, they can also be found on Chromebooks over a year old at this point that cost hundreds of dollars less. For what it's worth, I didn't have any issue getting my work done, and the Core i3 is perfectly capable, but I do notice the bit of a speed boost I get when I pick up my Spin 713 and its Core i5 and NVMe storage. It's subtle, but it's there. You'll also note the removal of the fingerprint scanner, the world-facing camera, and Samsung's stowable pen from the original. There's no replacement for the fingerprint reader or second camera on this iteration, but at least this Chromebook is USI compatible. So pen support is there, it's just not included in the box. For what it's worth, there is an option for a Celeron with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage, but $549 for that model is an awful lot to ask for a device with those kind of specs, even if it does come with the same beautiful display. So why is this all so confusing? Why all the back and forth? If this Chromebook existed in a vacuum, I would say it's a solid offering. But it doesn't. We can't look at this Chromebook without looking at all the formidable competition surrounding it, and we can't consider it apart from its predecessor or the other Chromebook I think it was directly trying to mimic, the Pixelbook Go. Think about it. Samsung chose to reduce the pixel density, dial back features, and keep an older processor in play to introduce a more affordable follow-up to their last Chromebook attempt. For Google, this approach worked in a very surprising fashion, making the Pixelbook Go one of my all-time favorite laptops. Sure, they trimmed the fat compared to the original Pixelbook, but the trade-offs worked together to make for a unique experience when using the Pixelbook Go. Samsung did the exact same thing, removing elements from the Galaxy Chromebook to make for a more affordable yet still enjoyable experience. And I'd argue they made the right choices in some respects. The screen's an absolute win. I don't miss the 4K AMOLED at all. The processor choice and addition of fans are other good moves to save money. The Core i3 is capable, the fans keep things cool, and even if the body is a bit thicker, it's necessary for those fans and the larger battery cell that drastically improves battery life versus the original. That's a big win. But the omissions are pretty big too. Losing the fingerprint scanner, the stowed pen, the all-aluminum sturdy build, the world-facing camera, the faster Core i5, and NVMe storage are all choices that combine to make things feel decidedly mid-range. So now we have a Chromebook that doesn't exactly fit in at the top end of the spectrum and is priced a bit too high to fit in with the mid-range Chromebooks that, to be fair, all come with their collective trade-offs as well. As I said in the beginning, this Chromebook is an exercise in back and forth, and because of this, it's tough to recommend outright. I think it's a fine Chromebook that gets a lot right, but I also think that of other devices that are far cheaper. Unlike the Pixelbook Go that made sacrifices and put together a thoughtful package that made me forget about all those sacrifices, I instead feel like I'm left a bit hanging when I use the Samsung, and I hate that this is the case, honestly. I really wanted to love this Chromebook, and I just don't. Perhaps it's all the potential of what's to come in this year that looks to be packed with new Chromebooks and new processors, but it's also just the bummer of wanting Samsung to cut all the right corners and realizing that, instead, it's shaved a few of them a bit too far to justify this price. In the end, if the price comes down and we see sales on this device that have it hitting somewhere in like the $550 to $600 range, this becomes a different story. But for now, unless you're just enamored with the red color, or with Samsung, or with an above average 13.3 inch 16:9 screen, I'd keep your options open. There are too many great Chromebooks out there to simply say, this is the one. And you deserve to get a great Chromebook experience when $699 is the asking price. But guys, that's it for this one. If you like this video, go down there and give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and make sure and click the notification bell if you'd like to be alerted when we make future videos just like this one. Until next time, we'll see you.